To say that things have changed dramatically since the first telegraph in 1844 is an understatement. Yet how many realize that the telegraph was as revolutionary to culture as the printing press?
Well, the telegraph was truly a milestone in human communications. It was really the start of virtuality. We think of the internet as allowing us to communicate in this great cyberspace world, facelessly and thinly, and yet the telegraph, for the first time, the telegraph allowed human beings to connect across distance instantaneously, simultaneously. So although there were only two people or a bunch of telegraph operators along the line, it gave people this extraordinarily new power. And in fact, the telegraph operators of the time, who were both men and women, were flirting and chatting. They were playing checkers virtually, and their bosses had to keep a close eye on them because they were so taken with this new experience of getting together. There's a wonderful book called Wired Love, an 1890 novel. In it, two telegraph operators fall in love virtually, and when they get together, they're tongue-tied until he strings a wire across two rooms of a boarding house, and finally he proposes in Morse code. So bingo, we had virtuality more than 100 years ago. The importance of that is that these changes in our life have been building for a very long time. All that we're struggling with didn't come in with the BlackBerry or the iPod. So we need to look deeply back in history to understand what we're wrestling with.
Until the invention of the telegraph, it was not possible to communicate any information beyond earshot or eyesight simultaneously. Or as Marshall McLuhan stated, it was not until the advent of the telegraph that messages could travel faster than a messenger. The telegraph paved the trail for telephones, radio, television, and the internet. It created a new era of simultaneous living. No doubt things have been changing fast. Who would have imagined that the family in the 50s who stopped in front of the department store window to admire the new display of TVs would give rise to a society with more TVs than children per household? In fact, there are now more TVs than there are people per household. My family doesn't fit the national average. God has blessed us with 4 children, and many might think we're odd for not having a TV in our home. I began traveling across the country with my family after starting a nonprofit organization in 2005 called Media Talk 101, which is dedicated to teaching about media discernment in the light of following Christ. I've had the opportunity to speak at churches, schools, camps, and conferences, and also began producing materials to help educate others on the subject. This was not something I'd anticipated ever doing years ago when I got my start in ministry. After high school, I moved to Chicago to work with a church, reaching out to inner-city children and youth. I started to use my skills of freestyle BMX riding for outreach purposes, as a platform for sharing biblical truths and the life-changing message of the gospel of Christ. This was the beginning of my ministry to youth and adults that has now spanned over 2 decades. What started out with a bicycle eventually branched out into music and then ministering as a pastor. In all of this, I recognized that media and entertainment was one of the biggest stumbling blocks to spiritual growth and family health in our nation. I know I'm not the only one concerned, so I set out to interview other authors, speakers, pastors, and teachers on this subject. And there are several concerns that are usually brought up. The first is media consumption.
Presently, the screen time for the average American child is over 53 hours a week. And so, we have a very out of balance diet in terms of activity diet for the typical American child, and it's overbalanced in the direction of media and technology.
The average young person, by the time he or she graduates from high school, will have seen anywhere from 18,000 to 22,000 hours of television. That means they will have spent more time in front of a television set than they will have spent in a classroom.
And the kids are doing the social things out of class all the time. They average, according to Nielsen Media, 3,339 text messages per month. When Pew Research did a study of youth and digital tools, they were astounded by the number of teenagers who sleep with the cell phone under their pillow on. If a text message comes through at 2 o'clock in the morning, they want it to wake them up.
All of the technological devices that have emerged in the last 100 years have resulted in an all-you-can-eat media buffet. And over the years, we have been conditioned to pile more and more on our plates. Aside from the amount of time that is spent, are there other concerns regarding media consumption? I took a trip to the Seattle Children's Research Hospital to meet up with Dr. Dimitri Kostakis, who is one of the nation's leading research doctors studying the effects of media on young children.
The newborn's brain triples in size in the first 2 years of life. It's an extraordinary period of brain growth, unparalleled over the entire lifespan. And it does that in direct response to external stimulation. So, if you will, the minds of children are fine-tuned to the world in which they inhabit. And the concern that I have had in my lab for some time is that if we expose children during that critical developmental period to what I call a hyper-stimulating environment, too much television that happens in a surreal pacing, which a lot of television does, will condition babies' minds to expect high levels of input. They will come to view themselves as living in a world that is so fast-paced, that quickly changes scenes, and then by comparison, reality will seem boring. It doesn't happen fast enough. We'll shorten their attention spans. And what we've found in studies that we've done is just that. The more television children watch before the age of 3, the more likely they are to have shorter attention spans when they begin school.
The American Academy of Pediatrics has recommended for many years now that children under the age of 2 should be discouraged from watching any television. The concern doesn't stop with toddlers. Dr. Jeff Myers has worked with young adults for many years.
What happens when somebody's really working on something they find absolutely compelling and interesting? It floods this whole part of the brain with activity in a way that actually stimulates the pleasure center of the brain. So when you work at something you really find interesting, it brings pleasure to you. The studies in media are really disconcerting in this way because we're finding that video games, for example, are really overwhelming kind of media, HD TV and things like that are so amazing and incredible in 3D. It stimulates the nucleus accumbens, the pleasure center of the brain, by draining blood away from the executive center of the brain. So it gives people the sense of accomplishment without ever having actually done anything. It has the same effect in the brain as somebody, except for the actual brain damage part of it, as somebody who smokes crack. It gives them the sense that they've done something really great when in fact they've done nothing at all. That's the effect that so much of the media has on kids today. And people ask me, why are so many young men passive? I can tell you the answer. It's very simple. We've arranged the culture to trick their brains into thinking that they've done something when in fact they haven't.
When the first home video game console, the Magnavox Odyssey, hit the market in 1972, it was unlikely that anyone could fathom the impact video games would have in homes almost 40 years later. In 2007, a remarkable record was set by the video game Halo 3. It had sold $170 million worth of games in 24 hours. That was not just a video game sales record, that was an entertainment industry sales record that was soon to be upstaged by Grand Theft Auto 4 and recently topped by the release of Call of Duty Black Ops, which sold $360 million in 24 hours.
There is a great need for concern. Every parent needs to be serious in thinking through all of these media issues. Now, 10% of children, according to the studies that have been done on this, are actually addicted to video games. They don't even have a category in the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual for this kind of addiction. But the scholars have found that when you look at the addiction to video games, it parallels one-to-one a gambling addiction. So parents who are not concerned are actually saying, it's okay with me if my child has a crippling addiction.
I had a soldier come into my office and he said, "Hey, Chaplain, I'm having nightmares and I'm having a difficulty sleeping. I keep seeing myself shooting at people and getting shot." I said, "What is your job?" He said, "I'm a mechanic." I said, "Have you ever been outside the wire to actually be confronted by the enemy?" He said, "No." I said, "Do you play video games?" He said, "Yeah, Chaplain, I play a lot." I said, "Man, you need to stop. You haven't been shot at by the enemy, but it's the video games that's messing with your mind. It's the video games that's giving you combat stress. You're not getting combat stress from combat. It's that.
When you talk to your son about his violent video games, you'll find out if he's addicted because he's going to go off the deep end because you're offending him. He's defending what he's addicted to. Talk about his sister and he won't say a word. Talk about Modern Warfare 2 and he's going to go off the deep end.
Video games have embedded in our culture, and there are multiple concerns notwithstanding the ones already addressed. There are moral issues as well as concerns about the use of time, the potential of video game addiction, but also the false sense of accomplishment and the fostering of escapism.
The escape ramps from reality are everywhere, and we have way more escape routes than we've ever had before. We have young people playing their computer games, escaping into the world of the avatar. And this is 20, 30 times worse than it was in the 1970s. You remember in the 1970s when we had one computer game, that was Pong. I didn't know anybody addicted to Pong in the 1970s. Beep, 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 beep. It was hard to get addicted to a game like that. That was back in the 1970s. Well, now 40 years later, there are hundreds of times more men addicted to these games.
They're not really experiencing or living anything, you know? It's a complete waste of time. And there's so much God wants us to do with our talents and our treasures rather than spending our hard-earned money and spending the valuable time, the finite time that we have to actually gain the rewards that you get from winning those video games. There's no real reward that translates into real life. And so that's part of the challenge for those folks that are ingrained into those video games. That's not real life. Get outside and experience real life. God has rewards for you outside of your cave, with your computer, with your TV, your iPod, or your PSP or Xbox. There's real life out there to live.
And these things are providing more and more opportunities for men to do what they want to do. They want to get away from reality. They want to escape from the real issues of life. And because of that, it's going to affect our very civilization, even as it affected Rome. Getting away from reality is getting away from God.
This is Shepherd's Hill Academy. We're a Christ-centered, biblically based residential program for teens struggling with behavioral issues. We have kids from all over the country and around the world that have come here. They're not going to have access to cell phones and video games and the internet and TV, radio, iPods.
When kids get here and they find out that they're going to be removed from media for the next year of their life, a lot of times they freak out. It's a bigger addiction than drugs a lot of times.
Pretty much my life consisted of media in some way, shape, or form. So when I came here and they told me that I couldn't have any of that, I kind of had a breakdown.
All of these things they truly feel that they cannot live without.
I've never been without media, and so coming here and living in a cabin with no electricity, no television to watch at night or anything like that, it really took a few months to really settle in, and I had to figure out new things to do and adapt to the new situation.
When they get away from the hustle bustle of the everyday life in America, the technology, the multitasking and all that, these kids then get to experience things that they wouldn't ordinarily explore out there in the world of push-button reality.
99% of girls that I know can never say that they have debarked a tree before or maybe people have built a fire, but I know that I would have never built a fire.
I have not seen any kids have a heart attack, have a stroke. Haven't seen any kids fall over, as a result of losing media for a year. They generally make it through pretty well.
At home, I would be a miserable person. I'd rather be to myself. But now, without the media, I ask for other people's presence, and I love being with other people in relationships like that.
Very seldom do we have any rebellion over, give me my stuff. I can't live, I can't breathe. Every day they are totally surprised that they enjoyed the day without any of their other life.
I found that there's more of a freedom like without media, in all honesty. I love that my phone's not ringing all the time. I love not getting text messages all the time. You know, I love not flipping on the TV and sitting there like a bum. We get things done, we're productive here, and I like that much better than having a bunch of media or playing video games or something like that.
Once you're here, you realize like the things that are more important in life, and you learn to take look at life in a different perspective, and like your priorities straighten up a little bit. I guess it's kind of clicked with me that I don't need it. Like, yeah, it's entertaining at times, but it's not like necessary.
And you're going to find out just how exciting life can be, just how wonderful life can be, just how joyful life can be, just how real you can be in the midst of a world that is phony.
Another concern that many are raising with regard to media and technology is the subject of multitasking.
Kids are absolutely convinced that they can multitask. Young kids tell me, you may not be able to multitask, Dr. Walsh, because you're an old guy, but we can do it because we've been raised with it.
One piece of research out of Stanford recently showed that if you're learning something and you're multitasking, actually you're not going to remember what you learned very well. You're using parts of your brain related to more automatic activity if you're multitasking while studying or doing your homework, and you're not using the parts of your brain related to deep memory.
And so the research has been done, and it's very clear, even though young people think they can multitask, they can't, because our brains are not built for it. Our brains are only built to focus attention on one thing at a time. Now, if things don't take focused attention, we could do multiple things. So I can chew gum and walk and carry on a conversation because chewing gum and walking don't take a lot of attention. But if I'm trying to focus attention, I can't divide that effectively. When we try to multitask, we lose speed, efficiency, and accuracy. And the research is very clear on that.
Maggie Jackson is a journalist and author of the book Distracted. Her concerns about media and technology don't stop with multitasking, but even more importantly, its effect on relationships.
I would say that with respect to technology today, I'm most concerned that we are actually shifting for the worse the definition of what it means to be a human. If we are satisfied with the snippet relationship, with the faceless communication, even for our most intimate loved ones, then we stand a chance of roboticizing relationships. I think that step by step we can make our technologies return to their rightful places as tools. They're not panaceas, they're not lifestyles, they're not, I don't think, appendages. We're connecting on steroids, but what types of connecting are we creating? That's the question.
Social networkings have a drawing power. Number one, because everybody's doing it. Number two, because you feel like you're connected. We all want to feel like we're important and like we're wanted and we have friends. Once you find like 10 friends, you're like, oh, maybe I'll see if this person's on there, that person's on there, and then it just gets out of hand. So I got to the point where I was probably on Facebook every day, all day long. I had it on my phone, at work, my personal laptop, just staying connected. You want to disconnect yourself from that, but then there's a part of you that want to always see what's going on in somebody else's life. And so I was like, well, Lord, I feel like I'm getting disconnected from you. Perhaps I need to be on a sabbatical from Facebook. I do think it's very hard to get disconnected from Facebook. I think it has to be a deep choice. Even, something that God has to help you with, because it's so enchanting and you feel like there's a void in your life once you break free from it. I think the biggest thing is building a persona that's not real. You post up these pictures because you want to look good. You post up videos because you want to seem important. You write statuses to make you seem like you're deep, like you have some kind of God-given insight. I think it's more shallow with relationships on Facebook. It's distorted because we feel like we are getting more connected to people because you have a scope into their lives. I won't say I'm going to be off Facebook forever, but right now I do enjoy this feeling that I have of being away from Facebook. I just feel like I have more time to do more things. It's just a peace that you can't experience any other way when you're really down and out, you can't go to Facebook. You know, it's those face-to-face, the family, your closest friends, your church, that's going to be there for you. Social networking sites are an enhancer for life relationships, but it's not a replacement.
Nicholas Carr stirred things up when he published an article in The Atlantic titled, "Is Google Making Us Stupid?" He is certainly not the only person to be concerned about the potential intellectual costs because of today's technology and media. Another person who has voiced his concerns is Professor Mark Bauerlein.
The digital age has swept into teenagers and young adults' lives like a tidal wave. It has now affected every waking moment of their lives. This makes social life a 24/7 condition, and it makes teenagers now growing up with one another, taking their cues from one another to, again, an unprecedented degree. And this is something altogether new in the history of human civilization. Never have teenagers been able to screen out adults so thoroughly as they're able to now.
I asked Mark what he would say to his students who are caught up in the digital age. How would he exhort them to aspire to better things?
The more you hang out with one another, the more you get online and interact back and forth, the more you just become a mass. You know, it's a great big race to the middle. That's what happens to you if you don't do something different with yourselves. And that means reading books, knowing a little bit about history. Read Witness by Whittaker Chambers, his biography of being a communist spy and then turning and going to the government and giving evidence about espionage, communist espionage in the United States. This is a great story. You should all know this. You'll encounter people who actually faced real stakes in their lives. He didn't sit around and say, "Oh, my girlfriend dumped me. I feel horrible. Let me go talk to my friends." No, I'm going to go change my Facebook page. The trivia of youth are amplified by these digital tools. What is the motto of YouTube? Broadcast yourself. Well, guess what? Yourself may not be that important. That may not be such a great subject to focus so much time on. One of the dismaying things about you guys is you get together and all you do is talk about your friends and what you do. You don't talk about anything else. You know how boring you are? I give them that, and they look at me and roll their eyes.
Well, there was the scholar from New York University named Neil Postman. Really important guy. Wrote a book called Amusing Ourselves to Death. The title of the book should tell us something because muse means to think. Means not. So amuse means to not think. You should think of that next time you go to an amusement park. This is where people go so that they don't think, right? That's the idea. He actually proves in that book, the more television you watch, the dumber you get.
3 years ago, I picked up a copy of Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death. He was a college professor, and one of the exercises he'd have his students do was to go on I believe in the book it was a 1-month media fast, so I just decided to do the exact same thing. 1 month, let's just shut down all media. No television, no internet, no blogging, and anything that was digitally related.
Our children were not initially enthusiastic about the Media Fest. They were terrified.
Our first impressions were rather shocked and a little bit scared. But as we got along closer to the day and we were praying about it, we were thinking about it a lot, we were excited.
I don't think one of our children would say, no, we wish we never had to do it, because there is a benefit. It just gives you perspective on how much time you're spending doing stuff.
I couldn't stop thinking about music, just wanting to turn on the radio or just look up something just for fun or just watch a quick movie. It was pretty shocking how addicted I was, and I didn't like that at all.
And it kind of helps, if any sort of addictions are building up, it kind of helps to break those.
It is a fast, and it takes time, and it's not just one day and then you're through with your pain. No, it keeps going. But then once we get near the end, it's easier, you enjoy it, you really can see the difference.
It's not just about taking away. If all you do is take away from your kids something and leave them nothing, they're in no better spot.
They loved the extra time of playing basketball with Dad, or playing cards with me, or just working on extra things.
Our lives are so busy and noisy, and it's like it brings a quietness, and then quietness is when you hear God's voice.
It is so sweet, the silence, and not just the silence, but the peace. Because if you're doing everything and you have this noise going through your head, you really cannot have peace, and you don't know that you're missing it until you have it.
Most important thing for me, for my kids to have, is that they would love God with all their heart and know Him and live their life in relationship with Him.
This has been so good in our lives, and it hasn't been boring at all.
We're not just saying no media, but we're saying use it in responsible and God-glorifying ways.
There are so many things to think about when it comes to media consumption, including its potential impact on our physical bodies. I've read many articles on effects ranging from hearing loss due to headphones, eye strain from hours of screen time, the ongoing debate whether cell phone use can cause brain cancer, kids getting carpal tunnel syndrome from so much texting, car accidents caused by texting and driving, and the list continues on.
So all of this technology is capable of wonderful benefit. However, because it's powerful, we have to use it aware of what the downside is. And there are downsides, and some of the downsides are physical. We know, it's intuitive and it's backed up by research, that kids who spend the most time in front of screens are also at the higher risk for overweight and obesity. We know, for example, that sleep is impacted by that. And so kids who watch a lot of media, particularly arousing media, particularly violent media, shortly before they go to bed, we know that sleep is delayed and sleep is often interrupted. Aside from the content, aside from the what of what young people are doing with the media and technology, we need to pay attention to how much, because it has a big impact on things like exercise, sleep, nutrition. And all of those things are very, very important, not just for our cardiovascular health, but for our mental health and our spiritual health.
The subject of media consumption is a big enough topic on its own, but you can't stop there. What if much of the media being consumed was unhealthy, or even worse, was found to be toxic? It's not just how much we are consuming, but also the content. What are we consuming?
I think most parents instinctively, intuitively know that there is content out there in entertainment, TV, films, video games, you name it, any form of media, that's not appropriate for a child. And the scientific research backs up that instinct that parents know there's harm there.
I'm hugely concerned that today's media influences attitudes and behavior. And because it influences attitudes and behaviors, it can do some great positive things, but it can also do some incredibly negative things.
There is no question in my mind, after 25 years of research, that violent media does impact teens, juveniles, children. In my studies, I found there's two people that don't think violent media impacts them, and it's the people who are totally addicted to the violent media and those who sell it.
Understand that there's more TVs in America than there are toilets, which should give us some indication that there's probably more sewage coming into our homes than are actually leaving it.
Is the concern about morality in media just a right-wing conservative agenda or a fundamentalist soapbox? Listen to this insightful statement. The moral importance of entertainment is something which has been universally recognized. A man may be judged by his standard of entertainment as easily as by the standard of his work. Where do you suppose that came from? You might be surprised to find out that it was part of Hollywood's Motion Picture Production Code in 1930. That production code, which was meant to be a set of self-regulating guidelines to keep unacceptable content out of motion pictures, was not a reflection of morality and decency in Hollywood at that time. It was the result of a general public outcry due to risque content in films being produced, as well as off-screen scandals in Hollywood. In 1921, nearly 100 censorship bills had been introduced in 37 states. In order to stave off the state laws and the potential of federal censorship laws looming on the horizon, the film industry hired a man named Will Hayes, who led a successful public relations campaign of industry self-regulation. In 1930, Will Hayes adopted the production code that was written and submitted by a Catholic priest. Listen to this example from the general principles. No picture shall be produced that will lower the moral standards of those who see it. Hence, the sympathy of the audience should never be thrown to the side of crime, wrongdoing, evil, or sin. This checked Hollywood for a season, but over the years the industry continued to press the envelope in order to draw audiences. By 1968, the code, which had been continually changed, skirted, or liberally interpreted, was replaced by a new rating system.
Asking Hollywood to regulate itself, in my mind, is rather like shipping lettuce by rabbit. We created this study where we evaluated 3,200 movies over 15 years. And we went to a media research company and also to a statistics department of a university and actually had them collect the data and evaluate it. And we found that in the 15-year period, Hollywood had produced 12 times more R-rated movies than G, while at the same time the average G-rated movie had made 11 times more profit than its R-rated counterpart.
It's not uncommon to hear the following argument about media. But it doesn't affect me.
I've heard from young people all the time that says, you know, it doesn't affect me. I could watch this movie and it doesn't affect me. This TV show, it doesn't affect me. And I listen to this music and watch these videos and they don't affect me. I play this video game and all these video games and they don't affect me. My simple response to that is, really? How do you know?
There is an unbreakable link between what we see and hear and what we do. You can't break that link. You can't think, I'll watch and I'll listen, but I won't do. God has joined them all. And again, that works the opposite way. You know, if we are feasting our eyes and filling our ears with what's good and pure, then it will have that blessed effect on our outward actions as well and will become a blessing to others.
The more we partake of media without guarding our hearts, we become desensitized to it. What once bothered us, now we're okay with.
For many years, Focus on the Family has placed a focus on media discernment because of the impact it can have for good or bad on the entire family. I met up with Bob Olszewski at their headquarters in Colorado Springs to ask him about the work that he does with Plugged In.
My passion and my calling is to help the body of Christ, young people, moms, dads, the whole gamut, honor Jesus Christ with their entertainment choices. I believe that as a general rule, we haven't done real well as the body of Christ in that area. Maybe because there's no scripture that one can turn to that says, thou shalt not watch slasher films. Thou shalt not be a gangster rap fan. Thou shalt not play M-rated violent video games or whatever. So the body of Christ is a little confused. We've got to take the issue of media discernment seriously, number one. And typically in today's culture, again, let's go back to movies. If the culture is looking, should I go to this movie? What do they ask? Who's in it? Who's the actor? Who's the actor? Who are the actresses? What about the special effects? How well did it do at the box office? Instead, we should say, what would the creator of the universe think about me going and seeing this? But if we say, I don't think he would be happy with me being there, then say no. Deny ourselves. Take up our cross and follow him. Deny. It's okay to deny. I think in this culture, Christians have said, denial, that's too tough. But we've still got to go back to it. It's a scriptural principle that we have to say no to some things.
I had to practice almost every day, do my tricks, and do the same thing over and over again. And that's something that I feel as a younger generation, that we don't get. We always want everything now, and there's really not much of a satisfaction from it. It's just a cheap feeling of happiness, and then you're looking for that next high, when the more important thing is just working at something and getting that real joy, the real satisfaction from it. There was a point in my life where I thought that media really didn't have an effect on my life. People would tell me, why are you listening to that? And my parents were a little skeptical, and I wasn't really a Christian back then. And even as I started to become a Christian, I still listened to some bad music, some hardcore with some screaming and the cussing, and it was just horrible. I look back and I'm like, what was I thinking? I wasn't like I was gonna go out and kill somebody, but it was still that those thoughts were in place of what I could be thinking about. I was doing a media fast for a couple weeks, and after that, I slowed down with media altogether. It's just amazing how much time I gained when I stopped, and how I could actually hear God's voice talking to me. Just allowing Him to speak to me was so amazing. I really feel that media has taken my generation captive. It's turned our thoughts to other things so that we can't even think about God. We don't have time. We're too busy. Busy doing what? Ephesians 6:10-11 says, "Finally, be strong in the Lord and in His mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes." So it's not only about not letting the bad media in, but it's about replacing it with something better, with good media, with good books, the Bible, good Christian films, something that gets you thinking about heavenly things so you are more transformed to be like Christ. I'd really like to challenge younger people everywhere, try a media fast, see how that goes, and He will show Himself to you, and He will make it worth it to not listen to that song or watch that show or be on the computer for hours on end. So put on the full armor of God, get in the Word, let's take a stand. Let's be a generation that is no longer lazy and apathetic, and stand for something that we believe in, something that's real, something that's right, something that's holy and good.
Newt Minow gave a spectacular speech in 1961 to the National Association of Broadcasters convention.
When television is bad, nothing is worse. I invite each of you to sit down in front of your own television set when your station goes on the air. Keep your eyes glued to that set until the station signs off. I can assure you that what you will observe is a vast wasteland. You will see a procession of game shows, formula comedies about totally unbelievable families, blood and thunder, mayhem, violence, sadism, murder, Western bad men, Western good men, private eyes, gangsters, more violence and cartoons. And endlessly commercials, many screaming, cajoling, and offending. And most of all, boredom. True, you'll see a few things you will enjoy, but they will be very, very few. And if you think I exaggerate, I only ask you to try it.
When I met Newt a couple of years ago, he said that I described in 1961 television was a vast wasteland. Now it's a toxic dump. And he's right.
I always thought, boy, would it be fun, and exciting to be on a NASCAR, pit crew racing, going all over the country and stuff. And as I looked at the time that those guys spent, it's a 16-hour-a-day job, 5 days a week, load the car up, get to the racetrack, the races on Sunday, load the thing up, get back to the shop. I realized that I couldn't give that commitment to it and have a family. As a result of that, I became an avid fan, always kind of maybe vicariously living through the television something that I wish that I could have done, but just didn't want to make the sacrifice for it. In the few hours that I had on the weekends to spend with my children, I was making it a priority to watch sporting events, whether it was a NASCAR race in the summer or football in the fall. I believe that I was a slave to television. I let it dictate what Nick Wasdrup was going to do and when he was going to do it by what I wanted to watch. And every race is the most important race until the race is over, and then it's next weekend's race. And you realize you're just being sucked into a cycle, and then you're buying into it. You have to keep watching to see what's important. Who's dictating what's important? It's not me. I want my children to realize that God is the center of my life, not the television. As I was watching these things and I started to pay attention to what was happening in the commercials, all of a sudden you start to realize this thing is controlling and training not only me, but more so my children. That was the part that really, really became upsetting to me. I realized that just unscrewing it from the wall wasn't going to be enough. I had to take a pair of wire cutters and cut that cable into pieces. I physically disconnected it and I cut it. Now the bridge has been destroyed to the past. We have to go forward. No, I don't regret it at all. I don't miss television at all. I have no idea who's the popular actresses or actors, or what the box office smash was. But I can tell you, when Samantha rode her bicycle for the first time without training wheels, I can tell you those things. I can't remember any of those games, but I can remember a lot of those things that I would have missed out on if I hadn't taken those cutters and cut that cable.
When talking about the content in media, many people are rightfully concerned about morality and decency. But those are not the only concerns. Mass media is one of the most effective ways to disseminate philosophies and false worldviews. Colossians 2 verse 8 says, "See to it that no one takes you captive through philosophy and empty deception, according to the tradition of men, according to the elementary principles of the world, rather than according to Christ."
Today's media is, before it was ever a video, it was some man or woman's thought and idea. And God says, you keep shoving the empty philosophies of this world that are against biblical values instead of on what Christ has said, you will struggle, number one, with your faith in Jesus Christ, number two, the joy of your salvation. Where do you find the empty philosophies of this world? Go home and turn on your TV. Go down to the local theater. Get that video game. Turn on the radio. Listen to the latest top 10. Listen to the latest top 50. That's where you find the philosophies of the world. What's happening is that we live in the United States of America, or the vast majority of people watching this live in the United States of America. But we have to understand our children don't see themselves living in the United States of America. They live in the United States of entertainment. And the Constitution for the United States of Entertainment has been written by MTV. And you say, well, my kids don't watch MTV. They live in a world that is governed by the values of MTV.
Robert Pittman, the founder of MTV, knew exactly what he was doing. He told the media, we don't just shoot for 14-year-olds, we own them. And as I thought through that statement, it reminded me of a statement that Adolf Hitler made when he was in Germany. He said to the parents, you're saying we don't want to come over to your side, and I say to you, your children belong to us already. The future is now in our camp. You are irrelevant. As I think that through as a parent now, looking back on those days, I realize that the media is not neutral, that there are agendas out there attempting to infiltrate and get into the minds of kids without them ever having to think it through logically, to change the way they think, the way they live, the way they vote, so that the future becomes more like what the secular humanist thinks will be paradise, rather than what honors God.
We would hate to think of ourselves as slaves. We are free, we are in the land of the free and the home of the brave. And yet, We've enslaved ourselves. Many of us have. And we don't, the worst kind of slavery, we don't even see the chains. And in fact, we think it's freedom. And we need the work of God in our lives to show us our chains, to show us what we've made into our idols that are enslaving us.
Idolatry, from the biblical perspective, anything that takes you away from your focus on the living God. Jesus said this, unless you forsake everything, you cannot be my disciple. Unless you love me more than father, mother, wife, children, brother, sister. He said, you cannot be my disciple. But I kind of wish he stopped, with that. No, he said, and your own life, unless you love me more than your own life.
I was a very angry, frustrated, depressed, suicidal individual, and I listened to a lot of angry music. And I believe that music only encouraged those really disturbing feelings inside my heart, and they didn't at all satisfy the need that I had in myself. And instead, that angry music that I was constantly listening to became very addictive, and I always needed noise. I always needed something thrashing. I definitely was in bondage. For me, media was an alternative reality. It was something that could help me escape the issues of my life, to not address them, to not pursue relationships with people, to not be committed to relationships as well, or much less to my relationship with the Lord. When I felt like I was really struggling and being challenged, it was really hard to open my Bible and say, help God. It was much easier to just turn on my iPod and blare music. And now I realize that the music only just distracted me from turning to the Lord. I still had to turn to Him. I was just taking forever to do it. When I grew to know the Lord, when I accepted Him as my Savior and He saved me, it just changed. It was just amazing what He did in my life. I believe that music actually was an idol in my life. So when I was able to recognize that, when I was able to let go, there was such incredible freedom. I am endeavoring as a follower of Jesus Christ to embrace the things that He values. And because I love Him, I want to be able to choose media that glorifies Him.
We live in a media-saturated society, and there are many, young and old, who have been taken captive in one way or another. But is there hope of finding freedom?
I was challenged to go on a media fast from television for a month, and so I took that challenge, and it was very, very difficult at first. I wanted to plug my TV in every day I came home from work, but finally made it through that month, and the thing that got me through was just filling my time with other things. Foraging is going out and finding food in the wild. It's not grown by a farmer. It's not cultivated. And so you go out and you actually have to pick it and find it in the wild. This here is violet, and actually makes a very good pot herb. A lot of the things that I've filled my time with is foraging, but also playing the guitar, spending time reading the Bible. It's been 5 years now that I haven't had a television in my house, and it has made a deep impact on the way I live, because I don't just get home and sit down in front of the television. I have time to spend with my family, and we occasionally will watch a movie together, but I'm more selective in my media than I was before. There are many different things that are poisonous, so you have to know how to discern between the poisonous plants and the edible plants. One of the ones I've been reading up a lot about lately is poison hemlock, which to the novice it would be easy to mistake that with what is a wild carrot or Queen Anne's lace. And so it grows all over the place, and it looks very similar, but it's deadly. And it's the same with media. It can be used for good or bad, and knowing how to discern between those things is important. It took eliminating that influence on my life and that time waster in order for me to make time to spend with God. I don't know very many young people that would decide to make a life change like that.
Do you think they should?
I do think that they should. I think, you know, this world would be a completely different place if we weren't all glued to a screen.
As I set out to make this documentary about media's impact on our culture and the growing need for discernment, I have personally witnessed a growing concern, not isolated to the Christian church, but clearly evident in the general population of this country as well. It's not the subject that people have a problem with, it's the steps that need to be taken to find freedom that many people are uneasy with. Maybe uneasy is too soft of a word. I have great hope that things can change for better regarding media discernment and making wise media and entertainment choices. But that will take some action in our personal lives, in our homes, in our communities, at our workplaces, and in our churches. And the best place to start is to consider this area in your own life. It's easier to think about someone else who may need to make changes in their media habits, but each one of us needs to take inventory of how our lives, our relationships, and our walk with God are impacted by the digital age.
The advice that I would give to other parents, and I've learned this lesson well, both by doing the right thing and often doing the wrong thing, and that is teach your children the value of guarding their heart. It is so important. That is, it's the most precious gift that God has given you, is the heart of that child. Don't ever waste it or misuse it.
There's a need to break free from these chains that bind us. In a sense, we're held captive. We're like prisoners in this culture. And so the first thing is to become aware of those bars, those chains that are actually binding us. And that comes back to an issue of discernment. We need to begin to understand that we need to be thinking biblically about every area of life.
I would point out that families have always entertained each other for 5,800 years, for 5,900 years of world history. Families were engaged in these entertainments together. They'd gather around the fireplace and they would play the music and the children would dance. They'd pop the popcorn. It's called entertainment in community. And it's something we need to bring back in this very, very lonely, existentialistic, narcissistic, self-oriented age.
True freedom is saying, I want to serve God. I'm aligning with Him. I want to find out what pleases Him, and what pleases Him is what I want to do. It's the attitudes I want to have. It's the behaviors that I have, not because of legalism, but because He loves me so much.
Youth like energy and fun. We need to point them into a positive direction, the positive things that we can do as Christians. And I think that needs to be more of a focus. Show them the positive things and the positive joys. God wants us to have joy. He wants us to have energy and excitement, but He wants us to be a part of that too. And we need to bring God into everything that we do.
Reality, when it comes down to it, I think is way more exciting than what you see on the silver screen. When you begin to see what's going on in God's reality, with God's story, you're going to really get engaged, and your children are going to really start to get interested in reading the Bible, reading the history of the world in the Scriptures, and reading the history of the world in the history books, because after all of this is God's story. And then they're going to understand that there's something going on right now, and this story continues, and they are living out one of the most, in fact, the most exciting dramas that you could ever create, and it turns out it's real, and you're a part of it.
When you unplug peace in the home, communication, intelligence, all of these things that are part of God's design for us begin to be restored.
You know, in Colossians 2 verse 8, it talks about people being captivated, being captured really by the things of this world. And to rescue people, they have to be recaptivated. They have to be captured by something else. And you know, that's where I think we want to come to our young people with, not just our young people, but all people, and say, hey, there's something even more exciting, even more wonderful over here. Come and be captivated by Jesus Christ. Come and let Him capture your affections, capture your talents, capture your mind, capture your whole life. And you know, that is not slavery, that is freedom. We want people captivated, but we want people captivated by Christ. And the physical, spiritual, emotional, vocational, social blessings that will flow, they're immeasurable.
We look to you to find freedom from the chains that bind us here. And we long to run the race before us, looking to the prize. Fix our eyes on you. Fix our eyes on you, captivated, Lord, by your holiness. We fix our eyes on you, fix our eyes on you, pressing on each day toward the finish line. We look to you to find freedom from the chains that bind us here. And we long to run the race before us, looking to the prize. We fix our eyes on you, fix our eyes on you, captivated, Lord, by your holiness. Fix our eyes on you, fix our eyes on you, pressing